frame. Probably some of the non-conformance, or I can say non-compliance gaps may be critical in nature. So probably it may even bring a kind of bad reputation to the organization, or even some of the gaps in the process that may be very vulnerable for any kind of it may even compromise a particular asset also. So like that, they will be providing the suitable recommendations to remediate the gaps, as well as they will be also highlighting what may be the impact for the organization if the particular gap is not being mitigated. So like that, the security audit process will be conducted. And here it is like a kind of an overview about the security audit and also the different types of audits. Because sometimes the audit will be having a scope of only auditing the website security audit. Sometimes it will be only infrastructure security audit. And sometimes it will be audit only on the incident response process. So like that, each and every audit exercise, so you will be having a defined scope. So first, what they try to do, they'll be trying to identify what is the level of information security process and practices within the organization, because there are several types of audits, multiple types of audits. You'll be finding multiple objectives for different audits. So first, they will be trying to identify what they are going to achieve from this particular audit, and for that, they'll be fine tuning their scope. So most commonly, the controls that are going to be audited will be categorized as technical control, physical control, and administrative controls. And they'll be having many use cases. So how certain controls can be tested, and how to evaluate the output, and whether the process is being followed as per the implementation, or is there any gaps. And also they'll be trying to cover even the physical security of data centers, because a few auditors, they'll be overseeing the physical security requirements, but it is also going to be one of the critical factor when it comes for the data center, because even the physical access, something can go wrong on the data centers. Then also they'll be trying to perform the auditing on the logical security of databases. For example, they'll be going through the audit trail. They'll be understanding like what changes that has been made to the database. Someone may alter a record, and someone may even modify the database schema. Like, so, what is the requirement? What is the business requirement that made them to make the changes? Like, they'll be going through all the changes, and also they'll be trying to highlight some of the key components that may be looking for different. I can say like there are different methods of audit, and it depends upon the areas in which they are really looking into. And also, like when you say the information security audit, so it will be like spread across performing multiple kind of assessments, like highlighted over here. So especially they'll be performing the based on the requirements of the organization. So now we are going to discuss about the audit process. The first stage is for planning. Planning will help them to understand about the organization in a better manner. So what are the critical business activities? Because the auditing objectives should be aligned with the goals of the business. Because they, based on the goals of the business, their processes will be potentiality to maintain the integrity, to maintain the availability of the particular organization's process, and as well as the information. So the audit for the particular client, so they need to make a review. They need to make a review like they'll be first they'll be identifying what are the possible areas of concern, because they'll be having an open discussion with the management to know what is their areas of concern, because some organization, they will give the upfront information even before starting of the audit process. They will give some key areas to be scrutinized. For example, change management. They will mention that they are concerned about the change management, because they know that they do not follow the standard process. And some organization, they will be providing information about the backup policies, the procedures that is followed in the organization may not to meet a standard. So like that, the organization will be providing many possible areas of concern. So that will be taken into the kind of input for the auditing firm, and they'll be starting from that particular angle. And they'll be reviewing the current IT organization chart, because over the period of auditing exercise, some internal approvals needs to be obtained from the respective hierarchical managers to proceed the auditing process. So they need to know current IT organization chart, and also they will be reviewing the JD, the job description, especially the data center employees. Because if there is a mismatch in the activities that is performed by these employees, may trigger some of the suspicious activities. So it is very important to know about the roles, the responsibilities, the job descriptions of the critical data center employees. And also, like, it will help them to know about the process that has been followed within the organization, and they'll be trying to understand all the operating systems, the various software applications, whether it has been in-house developed application or it has been a third-party application that has been bought from the external market, and also like what are the various data center equipments that has been in operations in that particular data center. They'll be reviewing the organization's IT policies, especially the IT security policies and the procedures, and they'll be evaluating the organization's IT budget. Very important, because for a non-compliance, the auditor may come out with multiple recommendations. For example, if they are concerned about the access control system process, they need to precisely confirm the presence of an employee who is entering the premises, who is leaving the premises. Probably they may be suggesting to have biometrics, because even the physical access card can be exchanged, right, to one employee to another employee. So that cannot be taken as a proof that a particular person is available in that particular premises. If you are binding physical access card with the biometrics of an employee, so probably that will be an additional layer of security that will certainly confirm the presence of an employee, right? So without knowing the company's IT budget, if some auditor is recommending a kind of IT retina biometrics, it will be very costly for them to implement. They need to understand what is their IT budget that they can afford. They can afford for the upcoming financial year. Based on that, the biometrics can be a simple fingerprint scanner also. The the requirement is to have additional biometrics, right? So if the auditing firm having the visibility of the organization's IT budget, that will help them to provide appropriate recommendations, right? Even a fingerprint biometrics is also a biometric solution, and retina scanning is also. When you see the cost which is required to establish the control will be having a great difference between the fingerprint scanners and the retina scanners. They're reviewing the disaster recovery plan. So these are various reviews that needs to be conducted by the auditing firm, which will help them to plan and prepare their exercise. So based on the review, they'll be trying to establish their audit objectives. So what they do, like they'll be trying to consider the multiple factors. For example, what procedures, what activities that will bring risk to the organization, because the operating environment may differ from one organization to another organization. So from the running process, from the running procedures, the auditing firm will try to identify the gaps, try to identify the risks in that particular operating environment, and they'll be trying to list the controls. What controls they have to assess in the particular place to verify, to validate whether it has been followed in the organization. If there is a gap, then probably it may bring a huge risk for the organization. And what they do, like in the next step, they'll be trying to test. There are two things here. One is like test, they'll be getting an output, and they'll be trying to analyze again to the against the expected kind of a result. So what they do, like they'll be conducting this for almost all the controls within their scope of their audit, and also they will be performing this again and again. This is to make sure that these controls are working in efficiently and effectively. So there are two terms that has been used by the author here: efficiently. So when do we say a control is working efficiently? If a particular control is working in an optimized manner, so without hindering the other process, and we say it is working very efficiently because the process that has been followed is very efficient. And second word is effectively. When I say effectively, the same process is giving the same output at all times. Then we say it is working very effectively, right? So here the author is saying it should be efficient as well as effective. So they'll be trying to perform the exercise again and again, and they'll be trying to evaluate whether the process that has been followed is really effective, and also if responsibility is to add records to a financial database. So elevated access is not required. A kind of only read access is sufficient, as well as they need to add records to the database. So going through the responsibilities, the roles and responsibilities, the auditor will understand what level of privileges that process. I'm just telling about the basic process which can be executed so that the business can run. Business can keep on running. For example, we can take some example from the layman perspective, because everyone will be well aware about the banking sector. Like, so you are about to withdraw cash from the your bank branch, and you are going to the branch. And have you ever experienced that you are unable to withdraw cash because of the cashier is on leave on a particular day? It may not happen. Even if a cashier is on leave on a particular day, someone else will be deputed for that particular day, and they will be running the show. It is one of the critical business procedure, or I can say the process for a banking sector, to make the availability of a cashier so that they can accept the deposit, they can allow the customer to withdraw their cash from their account, right? It is one of the critical process. Even if one of the person is not available, it will be made to run another alternative person, a kind of a cross functional training, right? That is very much required, not only for banking but also for in almost all the industries, because the business should not stop because of a particular person. It has to be run, right? So the cross functional training is one of the requirement nowadays, and we could witness many people are getting the training on various modules and the functions. Second, they need to review a change management process, which is one of the critical, and it is, I can say, it is one of the process the auditors will love to perform an audit, because change management, in the sense like whatever changes you're going to make on the live environment, on the production environment, probably it may be a change in the infrastructure, or it may be change in application, change in the network, right? Any changes they're going to make on the live environment, production environment, what is the process that is going to be followed? Because when you say change management, like there will be a there will be plan for it. For example, a scheduled plan of changes. Many organizations will be planning well ahead. For example, 7 days before, 9 days before, even a month before. There'll be many patches. They'll be scheduling even 30 days before, even 60 days before. They'll be freezing. They'll be getting the approval, and they will be having the change calendars because the maintenance window on the live environment, it will be very difficult to get an approval from the stakeholders. So they'll make a plan, and again, what type of changes they're going to make. Is it a kind of an application change or network change? They'll be trying to bring the supporting vendors into a kind of a arrangement so that the changes can happen. And again, you'll be having many coordinated meetings. I can say CAB meetings, change advisory board, technical advisory board, tab meetings, and also they'll be trying to identify what type of change they're going to bring and what is the reason for the change and who is going to implement the change and who is responsible and what are the resources required, right? There are famous 7 R's template for change management, and also like they'll be making the test in the lower environments, and also they'll be looking for a kind of rollback script also if something goes wrong, and all these things should happen within the change window, and the change window will be provided on the maintenance window. For example, non peak hours, non business hours, probably during the weekends. In a scheduled manner, they may provide you a couple of hours time, and if the change is getting failed, then we have to roll back to the previous stage or previous version within that particular change window. Otherwise, there will be a kind of a penalty, or I can say, for the vendor. So change management is one of the critical process, and most of the vendors will be looking into, because we know that a planned downtime is a kind of a maintenance window that will be announced enterprise wide. All the stakeholders will be aware that the particular service is unavailable for some reasons. When we say unplanned downtime, it's a kind of an incident. Some of the resources are not available during the unplanned downtime. So your SLA, the service level agreement, will directly impact because of the unplanned downtimes. So the vendors, or I can say the people who are following the change management process, will be well aware about this, and they'll be trying to complete the process within the approved change window. Then the next objective, to look into the backup procedures, because the backup procedures will help them to minimize the downtime and prevent the loss of important data. If any data is considered as a business critical, then the organization will be choosing the right strategy to execute their backup process, whether they need a online data replication, a data mirroring, or a kind of a backup that is followed every hour. Some organization will be performing the backup for every day or every week. It depends upon the organization, depends upon the data that is being backed up, and also like they'll be reviewing the physical security controls. Basically, this is to prevent any kind of unauthorized access to the data center. Even though they have the CCTV camera installed, they'll be having an additional layer of security. For example, they'll be maintaining many logs. They'll be having the security man guards, and they'll be also having some kind of an access control procedures so that nobody can bypass some of the controls in the physical security. Then adequate environmental controls that needs to be in place, ensuring that the equipment is protected from fire and flooding. Because in the previous decade, I can say 10 years, 20 years before, the preferred, I can say the floor or the premises for establishing the data center is ground floor or first floor. Right? But after the lot of disasters happened, so now it has been placed in many elevated floors, not on the ground floor, not on the first floor, because many areas may be flooded due to the monsoon and due to the various reasons. So nowadays, like there's a shift in even deciding the floors where the data center that needs to be situated. Like there is a shift in the requirement also. You can say performing the review. This is to collect the evidence after reviewing the process, which needs to be available within the organization. What they do, like they'll be carefully testing the process, they try to satisfy the audit objectives, and they'll be collecting the evidences. Sometimes they need to travel to the data center location, and they'll be trying to observe the process within the data set, how it has been followed. They will be having the defined the process, the procedures, and side by side they'll be verifying whether it is followed. If it is followed, what evidences can support, and they'll be reviewing the procedures so that they'll be having a satisfied to the predetermined audit objectives. They'll be having the list of audit objectives that needs to be tested, that needs to be verified. They'll be going according to their review. Next, they'll be reviewing the data center personnel. So they'll be who is having the access to the premises. For example, how they can be identified, whether they can be identified by their key cards or login IDs or secure password, how they are getting authenticated when they are entering the restricted premises, and also about the awareness. How about the security awareness of the data center employees? Because they need to know like which equipments are very critical for the organization, and that will help them to perform their jobs. Next one, vendor service personnel or supervised. There may be a requirement to replace a faulty equipment. There may be a requirement to replace some of the end of life hardware devices. Even the supporting vendor who is providing the service needs to be escorted. They need to be supervised, and there should be some additional controls, for example, CCTV cameras, making sure that the vendor support personnel is not doing any kind of unethical practices. They need to be escorted, and their premises, their presence to be recorded, and also like it has to be validated. It has to be validated, and during their service also someone should oversee what are the procedures they are performing, and finally escorting them, making them to take care of when they are in the premises, like supervising the vendor service personnel. And also the auditor will observe and interview the data center employee. This is to satisfy the objectives, because if uh, it's one of the best practice to take an interview from a random sample. For example, if there are 10 data center employees, probably they may pick 2 or 3 people just to discuss about the process, what has been followed. Even though they have the bunch of evidences collected, they'll be trying to have a kind of an interview or a kind of conversation with the employees to know about their level of understanding about the process and what has been really followed. So it is one of the procedure that will be followed. Then the equipment, the auditor should verify all the data center equipment is working properly and effectively, because some of the equipments that will be used as a spare equipments, right? And even they'll be trying to identify what is the status of those equipments, whether it is working as per the organization requirement, and about even the warranty terms also. Even the running equipments, they'll be trying to identify many information, like when the equipment was purchased and when it will be reaching the end of life, and which vendor is responsible for the support. And also they'll be trying to go through all the maintenance reports also, like equipment utilization reports, very important, equipment utilization reports. And because this utilization reports will help them to understand, because there are many redundant equipments will be available. So probably in a round robin, the equipments needs to be used. For example, if there is a air conditioning unit, right, in a data center, there will be a redundant kind of equipment will be placed. For example, certain air conditioning equipments will be run for a few days, I can say, or even it can be in a kind of round robin. For example, 12 hours this will be supporting, 12 hours another equipment will be supporting, like that. Or this will be used for the first 7 days, then the next equipment will be used for the next 7 days, like that. There will be many kind of arrangements, and they'll make sure that even the redundant equipment also properly serviced, and it is in the running condition or in the working condition. And they'll be even performing the equipment inspection. This is for any kind of damage or also the functionality. They'll be trying to identify the system downtime records and the equipment performance, because some equipments you'll be finding a degradation performance. over a period of time. They'll be trying to identify those gaps, and also they'll be conducting various interviews. So this is to determine if the preventative maintenance policies are in place. It is not that the equipment needs to be replaced only at the time of faulty, right, situations, because some equipments needs to be replaced regularly, even though if there is no requirement to replace it. It's a kind of an organization wide policy. For example, a particular equipment that can be allowed in the production for 3 years or for 5 years. So exactly if it needs to be replaced on that particular period. So there are many kind of policies like that, and some of the equipments which is running needs to be properly serviced. So like that, they'll be trying to identify whether these processes are clearly followed by the organization or not. Then various policies and procedures what needs to be followed. For example, they need to look into the various documents like the job responsibilities, the JD, because the JD will help them to know like what level of privileges that can be granted for that particular employee. Then the backup policies, what type of backup policies are approved by the management, whether they're going for a full backup or they're going for an incremental backup or they're going for a differential backup or they're going for a hourly backup, depending upon the frequency also. It's a online data mirroring, or they're doing a kind of offline storage of the backup, weekly backup, or it may be monthly backup, depend upon what kind of policies that has been followed by the organization, and various information security policies. And again, another important one is employee termination policies, because in certain organizations they'll be very having a clearly defined employee termination policies. There are two types of termination policies. One is like friendly. When I say friendly, it is a fair amount of time will be given as a notice period for the employee, and both the organization and the employee will be going through a kind of a fair kind of process, and the access can be removed at the last working day. Until then, the employee will be having full access, I can say, or I can say some limited access to the environment, and gradually the access will be revoked on various assets, and finally on the last working day, ideally it should not work when the employee is leaving the premises, right? Before that, all the procedures will be followed, and there will be a defined set of formal procedures needs to be followed, so in a friendly manner. Unfriendly termination, like sometimes it will be a surprise for the employee also. Sometimes it may be unethical practices. The organization may decide to terminate an employee, seizing the assets, seizing the corporate assets, and also like disabling the user account, and all the access will be either revoked or disabled without any notice, and it will be a kind of termination procedure for the unfriendly manner to the employee. This also may be followed if an employee is involved in any kind of an unethical practices. So the organization should have well-defined termination procedures. Whether they are following the friendly or unfriendly, it depends upon their situation. And also like SOPs, again one of the critical area. Whichever process the organization is following, it may be a change management or a problem management or an incident management, availability management, capacity management, information security management. So there are many process functions that needs to be followed within the organization. The organization should have documented SOPs, system operating procedures, because that will help to have a view of what is followed within the organization. So that will help them to know about how the process that needs to be followed within the organization. If there is a deviation, then they'll be trying to identify kind of a non-conformance. Then also they'll be reviewing about the operating systems that is within their scope of their infrastructure. So they'll be trying to review all these process and procedures, and they'll be reviewing the physical security and environmental controls. So this is to make sure how the security level of these are maintained in the data center. Physical security in the sense like they'll be including the bodyguards, locked cages, man traps. They'll be trying to test how it really works. Single entrances, there cannot be multiple entrances because the entry of a person as well as the exit will be managed well. Then the bolted down equipment. This is for the critical equipments. The bolted down equipment cannot be removed from the premises, and it will be in the sight of the supervisor or the manager who is taking care of the particular premises. And also there are many monitoring systems in place, so which will trigger a kind of alarm or a kind of a notification if some of the process is down or some of the assets are down. Like you'll be having when it says monitoring, it's about a SOC and NOC, security operations center or the network operations center. If there is any suspicious kind of an activities or a process or a traffic, so they need to have some kind of a monitoring system. Even if some of the resources are reaching their peak, for example, the CPU utilization, even the network bandwidth utilization. So there should be some monitoring system in place, making sure there is no impact to the running business. Well, additionally, they'll be looking into a kind of environmental controls. This is for the security of the data center equipment. For example, it could be the heating, cooling, and air conditioning, the ventilation kind of a requirement. So about the air conditioning units. How about the raised floors? So nowadays, they are not recommending the raised floors for various reasons. Then UPS, the uninterrupted power supply, and how the redundant power supply will support the equipment in terms of if the primary power supply is down. So like that, the auditor will be trying to identify the existing controls, and they'll be trying to test and also to observe what are the results they are getting from their tests, and based on that, they'll be providing their recommendations. Then the backup procedures, we already discussed about the different types of backup procedures. So we have the full backup, we have the incremental backup, the differential backup, and also the frequency. The frequency of backup may change depending upon the organization require as well as their budget also. And also it is very important to maintain a backup data center as a separate location, because during the one of the emergency scenario, I can say, like it may be a natural disaster. It could be an earthquake at a particular place. So it is one of the known fact that if the backup site is separated by a distance, at least by a travel of 30 minutes or so, the natural disaster may or may not impact that particular secondary site. So it is one of the best practice to keep the secondary backup at a distance of minimum of 30 minutes of travel, so that it may fall in a different zone, and probably the backup may be safe with a distance, because some organizations they'll be having their primary server and secondary server on the same site, but probably it may be in a different hardware. It doesn't matter. But if there is a earthquake, if there is a natural disaster, both primary and the secondary will be completely unavailable for the business. So in order to avoid that, it is one of the requirement to store your backups at a distance of minimum 30 minutes of travel from the primary site to the secondary site. Then issuing the review report. So the auditors, after running their test, their observation, conducting various interviews, and running many scripts, what they do, they'll be trying to analyze the outcome, the findings, and they'll be summarizing. They'll be summarizing the auditor findings. There'll be a formal, I can say, standard report, and they'll be providing the information about the gaps that has been identified And also they will be highlighting it. It provides only the limited assurance, because at that given point of time, from the samples that has been analyzed, they provide a kind of limited assurance, because it is not possible to go through all the evidences. They will be hand picking some evidence, and from the evidence, from their observation, they will be evaluating the process. So it's a kind of a limited assurance that has been provided to the organization. And generally, who will be performing the audit? Certified accountants, find Caesars, then the internal auditors, the corporate internal auditors, the external auditors, then basically the consultants. So who are having the technological background, who can audit based on the specific skills, and they'll be providing their consultation to the organization, uh, how they can close the identified gaps from the auditing exercise, so that they can enhance the overall security of the organization. So far we discussed about the audit process. So now we are going to discuss about the ISMS standard. ISO IEC 27001 is an information security standard and part of your ISO 27000 family of standards. When I say family of standards, like you'll be finding ISO 27001, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. Like you'll be each and every standards, it is of specific requirements, and you'll be finding many versions of it. And here, at the time of publication of this particular material, it is given as it is published in 2013. And also you'll be finding the plan, do, check, act kind of cycle. It is called as a Deming cycle. Actually, for management system, this is one of the mandatory cycle that needs to be followed. But later they removed this. Earlier, the requirement of any management standard, we need to have plan, do, check, act, any kind of management system. Later, I can say after a few years, what they do, like based on the organization requirements, this plan, do, check, act cycle is not a mandatory one. Maybe a good to have kind of arrangement. So coming to 27001, this provides a specification of the management, because when a management wanted to go for a certification, or an individual wanted to go for a certification, the requirements will be mentioned here, ISO 27001. For example, the organization should establish the information security management system. It should update and improve the overall ISMS. There should be some process in place to monitor, to review it, as well as to implement, and that should be a working ISMS within the organization. So these are like requirements. These are requirements, and these requirements can be for the organization, and requirements can be an individual also. For example, if an individual wanted to get certified in ISO 27001, maybe an implementation certificate. We do have auditing certificate. We have the lead auditor certificate, and we have certification for organization also. So all these specifications you'll be finding in ISO 27001. So many organizations like they'll be following information security controls. Some controls will be disorganized. Some controls will be disjoint because they are not aligned to any standard requirements. So this ISMS will help them to organize the various controls to fulfill their business requirements. For example, if organization wanted to have confidentiality, so the standard will help them to implement certain technical controls. For example, access control policies, encryption, backup. So making sure that the confidentiality of the information is being intact for the organization. So this ISMS will help them to organize as well as to provide a kind of an holistic approach for the organization to have the information security controls. And security controls, this will typically address certain aspects of IT. For example, you'll be finding the security controls, IT security controls. Sometimes it will be kind of non-IT controls. For example, it can be a paperwork or kind of a proprietary knowledge where the people will be following it, right? So your information security controls having the combination of both technical as well as non-technical controls in order to protect the information. For example, technical control you can use encryption. Non-technical control, if you want to protect the confidentiality, you can have non-disclosure agreement (NDA) with your employees, so that the information that may not be shared to outside people, because the employee will be signing the NDA, non-disclosure agreement. So like that, you will be finding a combination of technical controls and non-technical controls. And moreover, the business continuity planning and physical security, like this needs to be managed based on the best practices. And also here you will be finding a lot of domains: asset management and physical security, and you'll be finding the access control system, the incident management. These are the various domains I can say from the ISMS, where you'll be finding appropriate controls are grouped, and that will be the requirement for the organization. So ISO 27001 requires the management, they need to have systematically examine, and also they need to understand what type of risks are available in a particular process. For example, they need to take into account all the threats, they need to take into account all vulnerabilities, and also what to be the impact if this vulnerability is not addressed. And they'll be trying to design and implement a kind of comprehensive suite of information security controls. For example, they'll be preparing a kind of statement of applicability. For example, there are 100 plus controls, but the suitable controls for the organization is only 70. They'll be trying to bring those 70 controls within their scope, the scope of applicability. Then they'll be trying to identify what is the risk involved and how they're going to treat, kind of a risk treatment plan, the another document where the auditors will be looking into. First, when we are going for an audit to an organization, we will be asking them to submit SOA, the statement of applicability or the scope of applicability for that particular ISO 27001 version, as well as the risk treatment plan, RTP, risk treatment plan. That will help to know what process they are going to put in place to address the security gaps. And also they'll be trying to identify whether the information security controls that is in place or meeting the organization requirement. And also they will be trying to identify like what controls that will be tested, that is based on the risk treatment plan, because some organizations they'll be omitting certain controls, so that may not be falling in the auditor scope. They'll be trying to eliminate those scopes, and they'll be trying to identify what is the scope. This depends upon the risk treatment plan, and they'll be going through the auditing on the specified process and the procedures. Then the management will be determining what is the scope of the organization. So that sometimes they may limit to a single business unit, or they may limiting to a single location. And also they can even limit to a certain process, certain workflow, also certain premises. So the organization can limit, they can specify what is the scope of this particular ISMS. Probably they may have 4 locations, need not to have certification for all the locations. If 1 or 2 locations are not ready, what they can do, they can get certified for a single location. That is also possible. They may have multiple business units, but only 1 or 2 business units are ready for go for certification. They can provide that information in the scope of their audit, and they'll be performing the audit only for that particular business unit. And ISO 27000 family, it will be providing the additional guidance on many aspects. For example, risk management, ISO 27005. This will clearly provide the set of guidelines that needs to be followed for the risk management from the ISMS perspective. So the older version, I can say BS, the British Standard 7799. So previously in the year 1990s, so we are literally following the British standard. So at the time there was no ISO, there is no international standard for information security. So what we did, we were following British standard. At the time it was BS 7799. That was the standard we followed for the information security controls, and you'll be finding the Plan, Do, Check Act. So kind of requirement. Actually, this was introduced in the quality management system, and later this was accepted in all the management systems. Like we need to have the plan stage, then do stage, then check stage, and act stage. So kind of planning, how to establish the policy within the organization, how to define the objectives, and what process procedures needs to be included for the overall implementation, which will help them to manage the identified risks. And also, this should be in line with the organization business requirements as well as the business objectives. Then do stage, the second stage. Actually, here only we are implementing the controls, implementing the ISMS policies, drafting the policy, then aligning the controls, then defining the various policies and procedures. So everything will happen in the do stage. Check is a kind of assessments. You'll be having the various metrics, measurement metrics to measure the effectiveness of a particular process, and also making sure the information security has been followed by the organization. You'll be having the kind of monitoring, reviewing the entire process. At any kind of an improvement, any kind of changes you're going to bring within the controls. Sometimes the control may not be that effective. Probably a kind of minor changes here and there will help you to get the required results. So act in the sense like you're making some changes on the existing process, change on the existing procedures. So this is to make sure to update and improve the overall ISMS within the organization. So plan, do, check, act. And here one more information is given. All references to PDCA were removed from ISO 27001 from version 2013, and it is no longer mandatory. Previously, the previous versions, for example, 2005 version in 27001, it was made as a mandatory. Then after 2013 version, this is a good to have and not a mandatory one. Auditors may not look into these stages. Earlier, they were looking into these stages. So now they will be looking into only the evidences, not the existence of this four stages. And as MS will be certified across the worldwide. There are many accredited registers are there, and the certification can be obtained for the organization, as well as the certifications can be provided for the individual also. An individual can get a certified ISO 27001 implementation and kind of auditing. So lead auditor, a kind of certification is possible for an individual person, as well as the organization is also will be a kind of complaint against the ISO 27001 requirement for a certain process, and they will be binded with their location as well as their business units. It's like a three-stage external audit process. When you compare the ISO 001, it's a kind of a three-stage. Stage one is very preliminary. It's kind of an informal review of the SMS. For example, they'll be trying to check the existence of a particular documentation and the completeness of the key documentation. For example, we discussed a statement of applicability risk treatment plan. And most of the cases, this will be done through, I can say, in a remote manner. The auditing firm may not visit the premises. What they do, they'll be trying to gather the information from the remote, and they'll be going through whether the statement of applicability is available, whether the risk treatment plan is available. This is a stage one, because this will help them to get familiarized what process that has been followed within the organization. What is their core business activities? They'll get familiarized about the process, the procedures that has been followed by the organization. Stage two, this will be an offline. Stage two is more detailed and more formal compliance audit. And this will be a kind of a staged requirement. After going through the first stage, the auditors will be going kind of a drill down exercise in the stage two. They will seek evidence to confirm that the particular system is properly designed, properly implemented, properly in operational. Right? They'll be trying to identify, they'll be trying to confirm its the various requirements and as well as how it has been followed. And certain audits usually conducted by the lead auditors, ISO 27001 lead auditors. And passing this stage results in ISMS being certified with ISO 27001, the stage two audit. Stage three is a surveillance audit. You can say like reassessment. Ongoing involves follow-up reviews. Auditors, like this is like the organization still remains in compliance with standard because certain organizations will fulfill the external audit requirements for some reasons. Over a period of time, they may not follow the process. There will be a huge gap. So in order to avoid that, there is a requirement for a periodic reassessments. This will help to operate the ISMS in the same manner how it has been specified, how it has been intended, and this should happen at least annually by the external third party organization, but internally you can have it every quarter or every once in a 6 months. It depends upon the requirement that can be done within organization in an internal audit, but one of the requirement at least annually from the external auditors, so that you can make the ISMS more matured manner. You can make it. And various domains are given here, like you'll be finding the set of controls that is grouped under certain category. For example, human resources, access, information security, incident management, and BCM. So like that, you'll be finding several categories of domains where the required controls are categorized into. And structure of the standard, how the ISMS standards has been structured, you'll be finding the scope standard, how the document has been referenced with the various standards and sections, reuse of the terms, then organization context as well as the stakeholders, and supporting ISMS, then reviewing the system performance, then finally the corrective actions. Annexure A, you will be finding the list of all controls and their objectives. And based on the list of controls, the organization will be choosing some controls like which is applicable for them. That will be falling under the statement of applicability. Then clause 613 clearly describes how an organization can respond to risks. For example, the risk treatment plan. So why they are choosing this particular control and what is appropriate for them and what procedures that will be followed within the organization. So that will be clearly mentioned in the risk treatment plan. And there are here the author is giving the reference from the ISO 27001 2005 standards. Earlier it was 133 controls. So now in 2013 it was reduced to 104 controls. When I say reduced, some of the controls are merged, and also like some of the groups have been expanded. Then IS policies. Then asset management will be having 10 controls, cryptography 2 controls, communication 7 controls. Like that, you will be finding certain groups of various security requirements, and you will be finding the suitable controls also. So do we have any doubts, any queries in the ISMS? We just completed the review of ISO 27001 standard. Okay, thank you. And we'll go to the next topic, PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. Again, this is information security standard. This is to handle the branded credit cards especially the banking industry, where the plastic card that has been used for making the payments, because the payment card industry standard is mandated by the cards brand. For example, any banks, they are accepting the payments from the customer. So what type of controls they need to implement in their environment so that they can protect the credit cards customers data, because here the customer's credit card information is very critical, and when it has been used for any kind of a payments, so how the controls will help them to protect that information. So this has been developed from that particular requirement. So the standard that was created to increase the various controls around the card holder data, this is to reduce the credit card frauds, because in the previous decade you could find like a lot of credit card frauds happening, because the communication channel was not properly secured, and people may steal the credit card information of a particular bank customer. So a lot of incidents happened, and because of that there was a standard raised, and now all the banks been made mandated to meet the PCI DSS standard. So kind of validation of compliance again, this based on the volume of transactions that has been handled. For example, for smaller volumes of business, a self-assessment is fine. No need to have the external security assessment. And moderate volumes, external qualified, and larger volumes, this should be a firm specific internal security assessor should be there. This is for compliance of how the PCI DSS standard that can be assessed, and it can be certified. Requirements, there are 6 logically related groups called. You'll be having the control objectives, and if you expand the control objective, you'll be finding more than 200 controls, and this will be grouped under 6 groups. First, the organization should build and maintain a secure network and systems. And second group, how to protect the cardholders' data. And third one, maintaining a vulnerability management program. And fourth one is about the access control, implementing the strong access control measures. And fifth one, about the monitoring system, regularly monitoring the system as well as testing the entire networks. And finally, maintaining an information security policy. These are the 6 logically related groups where we'll be having a lot of control objectives and various controls that will help to achieve the PCI DSS standard. And each version we just discussed into 6 requirements, and you'll be having the sub requirements. The first one is about the declaration. So they'll be trying to declare like what are the proper implementation of the various requirements within the organization. They'll be providing a requirement, and also they'll be specifying what methodologies that is used to assess the implemented controls by the assessor. So this is to confirmation of the proper implementation. Third one, like they'll be providing the guidance like this is to assist them in proper definition of the requirement. So this is the requirements from the assessing perspective. And again, from the other requirements, 12 requirements are there. This is to maintain the security network and the systems. For example, installing a firewall. This is to maintain the protect the cardholders' data, so that the firewall can scan all the network traffic. It needs to be configured to block untrusted networks from accessing the system. So one of the primary requirement, a firewall needs to be installed, and it has to be configured in such a way to block any kind of malicious traffic. And second requirement, changing the vendor specified default system passwords. So there will be verification whether the device is been running with the default accounts, default passwords. So that is another requirement, because these passwords are usually discovered through the public information, because anyone who is having the access to the internet, they can even browse to know what is a default password for a particular vendor specific products. They'll be getting it online, because malicious individuals, they'll be trying to gain access or the unauthorized access to these systems. In order to avoid that, the default password should be changed. And protecting the card holders data, how they can provide in a technical manner using many techniques. Encryption, conversion of a plain text into a ciphertext with the help of an algorithm and key, so that they can decrypt the information at the receiving end by using the algorithm and the key in the reverse order to convert the ciphertext into a plain text again and to review the data. So encryption will help them to protect the confidentiality of the data. Then hashing again from the same cryptographic family, it will help to convert one way, I can say one way mathematical conversion of a plain text into a digest value, into a kind of hashing value, and this will help you to protect the integrity of the data, because even if one of the character has been replaced or removed or edited in the text, you'll be finding significant change in the hash value. So hashing will help you to know the integrity of the data. Then masking truncation, this is the various methods which is usually used to protect the cardholder's data, making sure the cardholder data is not transmitted in a clear text. Some technique is used so that even if the hacker is capturing the data, probably it is not in the clear text and it cannot be misused. Then encrypting the transmission of cardholders' data over the open networks or the public networks, one of the requirement. And whenever there is a transmission of the cardholders' data, they'll make sure it has been sent only through the encrypted channels. Then a strong encryption. So what is strong here? This is about choosing the encryption algorithm and the length of the key, because the length of the key will increase the work factor to break the encryption. So depending upon the requirement, the appropriate key length, for example, it may be a 64-bit or 128 or 256 or 512 or 1024. It depends upon like what should be the key length, as well as the algorithm, what algorithm that needs to be used. For example, it can be a symmetric algorithm or an asymmetric algorithm. So what will be an appropriate for that particular requirement? Strong encryption, and also they'll be using only the trusted keys and certifications. So this will help them to reduce many kind of hacking attempts. Protecting all systems against malware. So this is to have a regular updates on the antivirus software, because certain organizations, they'll be having the anti-malware software, but whether the signatures are properly updated, whether they are in N or N minus one level, because some organizations, probably due to some various reasons, the antivirus software may not be updated for a long. So it is one of the weakness, I can say, vulnerable in the system. So here the author is mentioning protecting all the systems against malware, because malware can enter a network through a number of ways. It can spread through internet usage. It can be spread using the emails, even the mobile devices or any external storage devices. If it has been accessed in the particular host, then there is a way for the malware to get into the system. Up to date antivirus software will help to reduce the risk of exploitation by malware. It can be easily detected, because malware can be detected through a signature based, and sometimes it may be a behavior based. So system which is always updated will protect the organization against the malware threats. Developing and maintaining secure systems and applications. When I say secure systems, there will be many vulnerabilities may exist in the systems, and time to time the vendors will be releasing many security patches. If these security patches are implemented within the particular time frame, then the systems are completely patched and it is free from those vulnerabilities. So it is very important to follow the patch management process, making sure that the security patches are implemented in the environment. And next discussion is about how to restrict the access to cardholders' data to only the authorized person. Because some of the principles, the security principles, the least privilege principle. So that will help them to know on a need to do basis, need to know basis, need to view basis. Only the least privileges that should be granted to the user based on the business requirements will help to restrict the access to cardholder data. And one more thing, like if someone is accessing the sensitive information, that needs to be recorded, that needs to be logged, so that the audit trail will help the auditor to review who accessed this data and also the date and timestamp. So that will help them to review their job description. And if there is a business requirement, they can perform the duty, or it may be a suspicious activity. If someone is reviewing the critical information which is not within the scope of their business requirement, then probably it may be one of the suspicious activity. Then identifying and authenticating the access to various system components, because each and every person with access to the system components will be assigned to a unique identification. And usually it will be a domain account. When a person is requesting an access to the environment, first their domain accounts will be identified and it will be authenticated. The IAM process, identification and the authentication process, mostly the end users will be from the Windows environment and their Active Directory or LDAP. So that will help them to identify the user and authenticate them on the network. And then based on the privileges that has been granted for them for various systems, they can be able to access those corporate resources, and even including the access to the critical data systems. And also they'll be having the accountability. After identification and authentication, we'll be having the authorization process, how whether the individual has been authorized to perform that activity, and based on that, the accountability will be intact for the user. So who performed this action, that will be pure accountability on the user account. Then restricting the access to the card holder, because even the physical access to the card holder's data must be purely secure. This is to prevent the unauthorized access, or even removal of data also may happen. So there should be a strict policy enforced for the physical security, tracking and monitoring all access to cardholders' data and the various network resources. So, for example, logging mechanisms that should be in place to track the user's activities. And these user activities, which is very critical for the business in order to prevent, in order to detect, and in order to minimize the impact for the data compromises. So, any access request to business critical applications, business critical data, that needs to be monitored, that needs to be recorded, that needs to be reviewed from the audit perspective. Testing security systems and processes regularly. This is for because new vulnerabilities are continuously discovered. A system which is scanned last week may not be the same when you perform this week, because 0-day vulnerabilities, new vulnerabilities may exist over a period of time. So it is not true to say that the scanning is just completed last week, so the system is secured today. Because all the systems, the process, the software needs to be tested frequently, at least once in a week. Again, some organizations they'll be scanning every day. It depends. It depends upon their industry. It depends upon the criticality of the business. They will make sure to uncover the vulnerabilities, because that could be used by malicious individuals. There may exist a vulnerability which is not identified so far, a kind of an assessment, a kind of a malware scanning, or a kind of security solution that will help them to really find any kind of vulnerabilities that is available in their environment. Maintaining an information security policy. This is for all the personnel who is involved in the organization, because a strong security policy that includes making the person understand what is the sensitivity of data they are they are they are dealing in their day-to-day activities, and what is the responsibility to protect it. For example, any sensitive information that needs to be encrypted, which needs to be stored in that particular system, or if any confidential data that has been shared with another user, how the procedure needs to be followed, what protocols needs to be followed. So like that, each and every user should have the proper awareness, and they need to purely follow it. And this is about maintaining the information security within the organization. So this is the various PCI DSS requirements. So do we have any doubts, any queries? We discussed in detail about the security audit process and followed by ISMS, ISO 27001. And we discussed about the payment card industry data security standard in detail. So do we have any doubts in these topics? Okay, I believe
Sir,
there are,
I have one question. So how
yeah,
often we
sure.
have to do the audit, sir? It's based on the organization policy, or what would be the better approach?
A better approach, the external audit should happen at least once in a year. And the good practice, I can say at least once in a quarter, the internal auditing team will be performing the assessment. Many organizations, the internal auditing team will be performing every quarter, but the requirement is at least once in a year by the external auditors. That is good enough. That is good enough as per the requirement.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
Yeah. So we just come to the half of the session, and we'll be having a short break of 15 minutes from now, and then we'll be continuing the remaining topics. So another 15 minutes, I'll be on mute and I'll be resuming the session. Till then, thank you all. Welcome back after the short tea break. So before the break, we are discussing about the security audit process. We discussed in detail about the ISMS standard, ISO 27001 standard, and we discussed in detail about the PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. So now we are going to discuss the ISACA standards. So before that, anyone can confirm, am I audible to you all? Slides are visible to you. Anyone can confirm?
Yes, sir, very able
Yeah,
to see.
Okay,
yeah, you're
thank you.
audible.
Thank you for the thank you for the confirmation. Now we are going to discuss about the ISACA standards. So basically, ISACA is about the Information Systems Audit and Control Association. So time to time, they will be providing a lot of guidelines and also many materials in order to make sure we have the corporate governance, we have the information security, information assurance in all the IT and related processes. And now we are going to discuss one of the major publications, COBIT. COBIT stands for Control Objectives for Information and Related Technologies. So it's a framework, I can say, a generic framework which is used to optimize your related processes. It will clearly define the process input and process output. It will also help you to know about the key process activities, because in each and every process you'll be having a lot of activities. So out of various activities, what is very critical, what is the key process activities, and also it will help you to know about the objectives and performance measures of a particular process. And one of the best in Cobalt is like it provides both KGIs and KPIs. When I say KPIs, it is a key process indicators. KGI is key goals indicators, because many framework will give only KGIs. You can measure the outcome of the process once the process is executed, whether it has been in align with your requirements. So that is called KGI, key goal indicators. So at that point of time, you will have no opportunity to fine tune your policy. You have to reiterate again, you have to reiterate again till you get the maturity. But here in COVID, it provides KPIs, key process indicators. Even when you are executing the process, you'll be having a lot of indicators which will help you to know to create the critical success factors, which will help you to factor your success of the process. Like you can fine tune your metrics at any point of time, so that at the end of the goal you'll be able to achieve your goals. So that is one of the beauty in COVID, I can say. Not only KGIs, KPIs are defined in this framework. So before going into COVID, anyone here certified in COVID in our team here? We have 71 people here. Anyone certified in COVID? Okay, okay, okay. So I'm certified in COBIT, and I'm certified in version 4.1. Actually, it happened 15, 17 years before. At the time, it was only 4 and 4.1. Now we have COBIT 5 and more. Like it is one of the IT governance framework which will help you to align your IT process to your business goals, because the basic requirement of COBIT, because many organizations, what they do, they have a robust IT process, but it may not support your business requirements. There will be a huge gap. Only if you go for an audit, you will find IT will be functioning separately and your business will be functioning separately. You may not find any real benefits from IT. So there will be a huge gap. This COVID will help you to link your IT goals with your business goals, because sometimes the IT will be a robust one, which is not required by the business. Sometimes the business will be seeking some assistance from IT, which is not available in your existing IT systems. So you'll be finding a huge gap, or the IT is not supporting your business requirements. So COBIT is one such framework which will help you to link your business goals with your IT goals. It will help you to optimize also. So there are five processes within the COBIT framework that are identified. The first one is EDM, evaluate, direct, and monitor. This is one of the process. Second is APO, align, plan, and organize. And third one is BAI, build, acquire, and implement. DSS, you deliver, service, and support. And finally, MEA, the monitor, evaluate, and assess. There are five process that is defined in COBIT. And COBIT is working very closely with the other international frameworks. I can say COSO. COSO basically for ERM, Enterprise Risk Management. COSO is one of the risk management framework. ITIL, again, this is for IT service management, information technology infrastructure library. Then BISL, ISO 27000, CMMI, TOGAF, and PMBOK. These are various framework and standards which is closely tied up with COBIT. I can say you'll be finding a lot of reference. You may find many references to these standard and frameworks whenever you follow the COBIT. And COBIT is more agile. I can say you can adapt on the fly, and most of the financial sectors, I can say financial industry, I can the banks and the NBF, non-banking financial organizations, NBFOs, they will be following COBIT for various requirements. And some of the basic COBIT components framework, you'll be finding an organized IT governance objectives. When I say IT governance, it is derived from enterprise governance. I can say enterprise governance or corporate governance. That is the I can say the root for governance, and it has been split into IT governance and non-IT governance. When I say IT governance, purely driven by the IT process and controls, and the non-IT purely by the business, purely by the business process, business functions, which will clearly be adopted by the organization, and you'll be finding set of good practices, best practices, followed by the various IT domains and process. This is to be linked with your business requirements. I can give some basic examples here so that everyone can understand how to align the IT goals with your business goals. And again, I'm
Sir,
going
I
back
have
to
one
the
question. So is the
yeah.
COBIT framework aligned with the ISACA standard, sir?
Yes, actually, this is a product of ISACA.
Okay,
This is a
got it.
product of ISACA, and this is a framework. And COBIT we are using for nearly more than 20-25 years. We are using COBIT, especially in the banking sector. When you go for any kind of audit, the first comes in auditor's mind is whether the process are aligned with COBIT. If it's so, there will be no question about the optimization of the process. It is one of the beautiful framework, I can say, you can enjoy if you are implementing COBIT. You'll be finding the transparency between multiple process. You know exactly from which IT process you are getting an output, and to which IT process this output is going as an input. You find the flow. You find the flow, and it is one of the best framework. And this is from the ISACA only, COBIT. They are the I can say the promoters, and they are the people who framed this. Usually, I think the history of COBIT, this was made as an audit, then for compliance, then finally it was aligned it for the governance.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
Yes. So going back to the slide, like we are just discussing about linking the IT goals and the business goals, because sometimes if you are hearing for the first time, because you need to understand how the IT goal should link with your business goal. I'm just going back to the same industry, banking sector, because we all know about banking industry well. If you go to any branches, any bank branches, and there will be a ticketing queue system, right? When you go and you have to request for a token, and it will be a kind of automated token, and you'll be getting a token. For example, you'll be getting a number 79, right? And you'll be getting the running number on the monitor. For example, 65 maybe counter number 2, 67 counter number 3, then 67 counter number 4. You have to wait for your turn, right? There will be an SLA, service level agreement. If you are visiting a branch, right, for a deposit, there will be a SLA for 3 minutes or 5 minutes. So within that time, the complete process needs to be completed. A kind of a withdrawal or a deposit of cash at the branch. So how this works, this will be integrated into the IT. So the queue system will make sure to segregate customer who came for deposit and which counter the particular service is being provided, and whether the counter is free at the time or they are attending a customer. Once the queue has been cleared, then it will check the queue, and the customer will be assigned to that particular counter, and the counter executive will be calling them and they'll be fulfilling their requirements, and this will be executed by the IT at the background. In terms of deposit, then it has to be linked to your bank backend database, and it has to be updated so that your transaction will get reflected in your bank account immediately. So like your IT process and your business process should be linked to give you the optimized results. So like that, the COBIT is one of the best governance framework which will help you to align your IT goals with your business goals. This is just an example. And the process descriptions, you'll be finding a reference process model is in very common language, how the process should be run. For example, the areas of responsibility, for example, plan, build, run, monitor. You'll be finding the RACI matrix. Who is responsible? Who is accountable? Who all needs to be informed, and who needs to be consulted, right? For a process, if you put it in the business terms, you will understand about the RACI matrix, which is very common in the IT industry, I can say. So you will be finding the RACI matrix for each and every process within the COBIT framework. Then control objectives, it's a kind of a high level requirements. What needs to be considered for the effective control for each and every process? I can say in COBIT we have nearly 200 plus control objectives which needs to be met. Management guidelines. So this will help you to assign the responsibility, and we'll be having the performance measurement metrics, and also this will help you to understand the interrelationship with the other IT processes. So kind of management guidelines, and again the maturity models, like how you are able to measure the maturity of a software. For example, the CMMI, right, capability maturity model, we say the particular process is at 4.1, 4.7, because everyone will be trying to achieve 5 maturity level, right? So here the COBIT also will help you to assess and understand the maturity level of each and every process. For example, whether the particular process is running in 2.1 and whether the management decided to take it to 3.5. And also you'll be find a lot of drivers. I forget to provide the drivers. Like drivers will help you to know about the critical success factors which need to be followed. And also it will help you to assess at any point of time, where are we now? Like it's a kind of an assess. You can take a snapshot of each and every process and where do we want to be. This is assess and to be situation, and what needs to be done. You'll be trying to identify the gaps. What are the various process that needs to be fine-tuned, and what changes you're going to make, and how do we go there? Some changes, then finally, did we get there? You make a assessment there. So like that, COBIT will help you to perform even the enhancement of any running IT process. And another beauty of COBIT is no need to implement this for a new startup organization. This can be even tailor-made for the running process also. For example, some bank is running with IT process, and you want to align with COBIT. You want to enhance the optimization of the IT process. It is very much possible. Only thing, you need to identify what process is currently running and what are the activities that is followed in the process, and how that can be aligned, and how that can be taken into the next level. Like that you can able to perform. And also like this will be even supporting the CSA also, the continuous service improvement, the CSA. Any service that can be optimized over a period of time, not maybe in the initial stage over a period of time, like 3 years or 5 years down the line, you'll be finding the process can be optimized to a stage where that is the final goal of the organization. The CSI factor that can be improved into the by using the COBIT framework. So, do we have any doubts, any queries about the COBIT framework? Then we are moving to the next risk IT framework. This again from the ISACA only. So the risk IT framework, and this you will be finding the references from both COBIT as well as from VAL IT. VAL IT, one more framework. We'll be getting the value from the IT processes again from the ISACA standard. I can say ISACA publication. They provided different frameworks. One is COBIT, other one is VAL IT, and this will be a combination of the risk IT framework. You'll be discussing about the treatment of risk management. First, you'll be trying to identify the risks for various assets, and you'll be trying to identify which control will help to manage those risks, and you'll be finding the supporting guidelines, how to execute those processes. Risk IT framework. Effectively, how to manage the business risks to make sure to get the organization success. Because the IT risks is sometimes overlooked, because the corporate will give preference to business risk. For example, it may be a market risk, it may be credit risk, it may be an operational risk. But IT risks probably it may be overlooked, and which needs to be given top priority, as well as to have the same weightage for the other business risks. Set of principal guidelines which will help you to effectively manage your IT risks. That is about the risk IT framework. So next we are going to discuss about the MS.c guidelines, National Institute of Standards and Technology. So most of the organizations, they will be borrowing the best practice, because NIST time to time they will be publishing many security documents where you will be finding the set of best practices that can be followed. Because basically NIST guidelines, originally this is developed to help the agencies to meet specific regulatory compliance requirements. I can say in NIST, basically this will be originating to US federal agencies requirements, so that to fulfill that, NIST will be developing many best practices and framework so that it can be adapted by the federal agencies in US. And now you find globally, most of the corporates, they are following this NIST standards. Yeah, here you'll be finding, yeah, it is responsible for developing information security standards and guidelines, including minimum requirements for federal information systems. Originally, this was guiding the federal agencies in US, and now later, because of the global acceptance, most of the corporates, they are following the NIST standards. You'll be finding the special publications, information security, incident management, the risk
Ramesh,
management.
one
Yes,
question. See,
yeah,
we
please.
are adapting multiple framework, right? So, how
Yes,
do you choose this, right? Where we can fit in this COBIT or this NIST, and also who prefers it or who choose it? This is the way we can adapt this framework
yeah,
based on the needs,
basically,
or
yeah. Basically, the CTO or CIO or even CISO can recommend to borrow some of the framework or best practices, because the current IT process may not fulfill some of the compliance requirements. For example, if an organization wanted to go for some certification, and for example, it may be ISO 27001, or they may go for a corporate governance in terms of ISO 38500. So,
hmm?
in order to fulfill those standards, the process needs to be standardized. If you want to get ISO 27001, your IT process to be standardized, and for that the frameworks and the guidelines will help you to achieve that.
Okay.
And
My
the
question is,
yeah.
right, which one we will choose? It's a combination of also all the frameworks, or how you mean to say CTO will define this, or CAO will define this. We need to go for
Yes,
this one
yes, exactly, and it
in
depends
line
upon
with
the
the
industry. Yeah, it
industry
depends upon the
requirement.
industry. I can say if you are from the banking industry, I bet you can go for COBIT. If you are from the banking industry, if you are from the banking, again PCI-DSS, that will be very appropriate for you. And if you are from IT service provider background, ISO 27001. It depends upon the industry where you are coming from, and also about your client requirements. For example, your client is being a banking customer, you have to follow COBIT. You have to follow the Basel 2. Like that, based on the client requirements, your infrastructure should be implemented or protected. That may be driven by your client requirements.
Okay, okay.
In case the organization is not able to know which sort of framework would be helpful for them, right? So for that reason, they may go for some consultancy as well. So
Exactly, exactly.
they will
They go for
provide the
consultancy. Yeah, yeah. I can give you some examples. Like there are big four companies. For example, Deloitte, KPMG, I can say
PwC.
ENY, PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. So these are the four big companies. I can say big four. They will be guiding the organizations to choose the appropriate standards and frameworks,
right.
and they will help them to get certified also. I can say even TÜV is also there. TÜV is there. Then British Standards Institute is there, BSI. So there are many institutions which will help the organization to get to know better about their requirements. They will understand their infra, and they will be helping them. As Mr. Shiva mentioned here, there are many consulting firm will help the organization to get to identify what is the requirement, and they will support them. They will support them even to get the certified also. And
Okay.
it is one of the, and it is one of the basic requirement if they are going for any new business bidding. For example, there may be application development for a banking sector. So they will expect the bidder should be certified from this standard. They should follow this framework. It will be mentioned in their even in their tender itself. So based on that, the organization will be going for that. It is a requirement by the client, actually the client requirement, which will force the organization to go for the adaptation of the framework and the standards.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, for
Thank
any certifications and all, even the consultancy team, right, will come to a workplace
Yes,
and
yes,
understand the
exactly,
business and understand what are all the
exactly,
business process that is in place, understand the process documents, what is there already available, and what needs to be
yes,
done to pass through the certification. So they will guide
exactly.
all those areas.
Exactly, Mr. Shiva. They will understand their business industry, their existing process, the procedures, and based on that, they will tailor made. They will tailor made the requirements. Even I can recall when I completed my ISO 27001, I'm a lead implementer certification holder for ISO 27001. It happened in the year 2006, I believe. So at that time, I did my certification BSA, British Standards Institute, and it is the only one institute in India at that time who provided this ISO 27001, as Mr. Shiva mentioned here, and it is one of the corporate requirement. So they came to our office organization, they understood the business, and also they inquired about the client for which we are going to take the project. And
you.
based on the conjunction of a requirement, they fine tune and they provided the certification for us. They conducted the training program for 5 days. It's a five full day program. Then
Yeah.
they tailor made the solution.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it.
Thank you, Mr. Ravi, and thank you, Shiva. So this is about the MS.c special publication. You'll be finding the kind of set of guidelines, a set of best practices, and most of the organizations they are simply following this publication. And it one of the beauty in NIST is like you can tailor made according to your requirements. It is not a rigid. It is not a rigid publication. So you'll be finding a lot of best practices, and whichever is suit your organization, whichever is required for your organization, you can able to borrow those best practices, and you can inbuild into your IT processes. And this is about the NIST special publications. The national and sector specific standards, we have the BIS standard, Bureau of Indian Standards. So this is for like some of the business you'll be having. For example, for agriculture, what is the standard to be followed? For automotive and for energy efficiency, like that, you have a lot of sector specific standards. Sector specific standards you'll be finding here, what needs to be followed. Dedicated standard bodies information over here. And next topic, we are going to discuss about the RBI guidelines for banks. So because RBI is a regulator for the entire banking industry in India, and which will help to regulate the commercial banks and the NBFCs, non-banking financial corporations, companies in India. And also this will be monitoring the money market also. It will be regulating the money supply and also the various credit policies within the organization. And now we'll see the structure of the RBI. It has been trusted with a 21 member board and headquartered in Bombay. And we'll be finding the representatives in other cities. And we'll discuss about the critical functions of RBI. Let us go to that directly. Yeah. The basic functions of Reserve Bank of India to regulate the issue of bank notes, the currency notes, and also keeping of reserves. So this is to have the stability in the monetary, and also to operate the currency and creditary system. And the objective is to maintain the price stability while keeping in mind the objective of the growth of the nation. And it will be providing the guidelines to the banking sector time to time, and making sure to have the economical stability in India, I can say, in the country. So next, about security policy. So policy which will help you to understand the overall requirement by the organization, the high level statements which needs to be cascaded into the running process and the procedures uh, into the organization practices. For example, it may even define about the doors, the locks, the keys, so how it needs to be built upon, and what procedures that needs to be followed, how the functions and flow, as well as how the people can access, how the people can interact, how the people can get access to those data also. So now we are going to discuss about the information security audit process. So what they're going to audit the systems. So first they'll be trying to identify the network vulnerabilities, which is available in the interception, which is affecting the availability. And also they'll be understanding the various network vulnerabilities in the access points, in the entry points. And they'll be evaluating the various controls, for example, the intercepting controls that has been implemented in the environment, and the availability controls for the various devices and for the various users when they want to access the corporate resources, and about the various controls in the access and entry points. So the auditors will be evaluating the network vulnerabilities and the controls that has been implemented. So when it comes to interception, so how the data that has been transmitted over the network, for example, whether the data has been transmitted in a clear text, or based on the business requirements, it has been in an encrypted channel. So what is the business requirement, and what will happen if it has been intercepted by an unintended third party, whether they could introduce any kind of a harmful effect to the organization. So like that, the various requirements that will be scrutinized and that will be audited by the auditors about the interception of data. Because from the man in the middle attack, they'll be trying to identify if the transmitted traffic is being captured, then what will be the impact for the organization. Then availability like the business the business systems, the data should be available to the users without any kind of an interruption. And if there is an interruption, then what will be the impact for the organization? So whether the organization is having the sufficient controls so that they can support the business requirements. For example, in terms of any redundant of the availability of the data. Then access points, the entry points, like how this can able to protect the intruders, whether the control can able to detect the authorized users and the unauthorized users, and whether any malicious traffic that can able to intrude into the network. So like that, they'll be trying to evaluate all the controls that has been implemented, especially on the entry and the access points. Then controls like what controls will help them to protect the data. For example, encryption. So that will help to secure the wireless networks. And again, encryption, what algorithm that has been followed and what key that has been key length that has been fixed by the organization, and how the key management process, where the keys that will be stored, and how will be and who will be having access to it. Like that's a lot of other process. The related information also will be audited by the auditors. Then the availability controls, the kind of automatic being configured, how the antivirus software will help to protect the overall network of the corporate.
Rogue systems, if any rogue APC.
Exactly. Exactly, sir. Exactly. Any rogue systems, whether it is trying to get connected to your wireless LAN connectivity. So probably it could be a rogue device, which is not available in your corporate inventory, but it is trying to get access to your corporate network, so that they can able to sniff some data. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And now we are going to discuss about the information security audit process. Because the auditors will be asking certain questions to better understand about the network and also its associated vulnerabilities. Because first they will be trying to assess what the extent of network is and how it is structured. Is it a wired, wireless, and which business data is being stored in that particular network, and who will be having access to it. So probably they'll be getting a network diagram, so they will be able to assist the auditor in this process. And also they'll be trying to identify whether the data is first classified. If the data is classified, whether it is critical to business or it is non-critical to business, because the critical information that needs to be protected. For example, it could be email servers, web servers, and also the applications that have been hosted and accessed by the business customers. So these are the various typical areas of focus, and also they will be trying to identify who has access to this and also to what parts. So what is the level of access they have, whether they have the read access or they have the write access, and with respect to business, like who needs to have access, like that they'll be looking into from those perspectives. They'll be performing the information security audit. So do customers and vendors have access to the systems on the network? And the next question will be, can employees access the information from home? Because after this pandemic corona situation, most of the employees, they are trying to connect from their home network. They are not connected from the office network, and then they'll be having suitable other controls to make sure that the data is not that vulnerable, that is stored on their local devices. Then lastly, the auditor should assess how the network is connected, external networks, and how it has been protected, whether they are connected to VPN or VDI or Citrix. So like what are the other technology that helps to get connected to the systems and to interact with the corporate resources. And most networks are least connected to the internet, which is could be one of the point of vulnerability. Again, they will be trying to identify whether there is any web security enabled. For example, it may be a Zscaler or any other security solutions are available, which will scan the web traffic, so that making sure the traffic which is entering the host is not that malicious. So how they are able to identify those vulnerable points, and this will be the kind of questionnaire that will be prepared by the auditors. Then encryption is like one of the I can say the technological solution where the sensitive information that belongs to an employee, that belongs to the customer, belongs to an organization, so that can be protected. Because when you say encryption, even at the time of storing the information in the disk, for example, when the data is at rest, one of the best solution is to encrypt the data, so that even if the device is compromised, the data is completely encrypted, so that we can have reasonable amount of security. Unless until the data has been decrypted, the data may not give any kind of intelligent access to the intruder. So encryption is one of the recommended solution if you want to protect the confidentiality of the data. Even if the data is in motion also, when the data is getting transmitted from one process to another process, or one system to another system, if the data is encrypted, then it can provide reasonable amount of security on the confidentiality perspective. And auditors should continually evaluate the client's encryption policies. For example, encryption is available, and what is the policy? The encryption policy will allow them to choose what algorithm they need to choose. Whether they are going to choose DES algorithm, or they're going to use IDEA or Blowfish, or they're going for a symmetric or asymmetric, like that. It will help them to choose the appropriate algorithm, as well as the length of the key, whether 64-bit is sufficient, or 128-bit, or 256, or 512, or 1024. It depends upon the encryption policy. And also about the key management, where the encryption key that needs to be stored. It has to be stored in the local host or a centralized store, and who will be having access to that key, and when the key can be changed. Like that, there will be a lot of procedures around encryption. So the auditors will be looking into those encryption policies and the various procedures. And here, companies that are heavily reliant on the e-commerce transactions, because sometimes the most of the, I can say, the major business will happen in the e-commerce, and also the company will be looking into various business on the wireless networks. They're extremely vulnerable, because like many critical information that can be transmitted from system to system, so there are many, I can say, vulnerable points, and the auditors will be looking into those vulnerable areas where the suitable controls have been implemented for that, and policies and procedures that should be documented, so that making sure that all the data that is getting transmitted or properly protected from various mechanisms. And auditor also, they'll be verifying that management has controls all over in place, and over the data encryption also, data encryption management process. Then access to the keys should require dual control. So here the author is recommending to have the dual control, not a single control. Like keys should be comprised of two separate components, and also should be maintained on a computer which is not accessible to programmers or outside users. Should be stored in a different system. And also the management should attest the encryption policies, so making sure the data protection it at the desired level, and verifying the cost of encryption does not exceed the value of the information itself. So that is also one of the requirement, the cost benefit analysis. Always the cost of data protection should not exceed the cost of the value of the data itself. And also the data which is required to be maintained for amount of time to be encrypted, and also transported to a remote location, not on the same premises. And the sensitive information that needs to be transported to a particular distance, and it has to be managed in a remote location. And the procedures should be in place to guarantee all the encrypted sensitive information arrives in the location, or stored properly. And there is a process to verify the viability as well as the usability. of the information at the destination, because sometimes the encrypted data may be corrupted due to various reasons, and at the time of restoration they'll be finding a lot of difficulties in that. So in order to avoid that, there'll be a lot of uh, procedures in place to verify the validation of those encrypted copies also. And finally, the auditor should attain the verification for the management encryption system is strong and it is not compromisable, right? Based on their requirements. So they are following the best practices. So this is about the encryption and IT audit. So next topic, we're going to discuss about the logical security audit. So when you say logical security audit, which will help to protect the system, first comes in mind is the passwords. Because whenever you want to access a system, user ID and password will help you to get into that system, right? So the passwords, right, should not be shared and with the other employees, and also this has to be changed at regular intervals. And nowadays, the corporates are forcing the employees to change the passwords. They cannot live with the same password for a particular period. For example, every 42 days, every 30 days. So depending upon the organization policies, the employee should change the password, and also they should choose a complex password. For example, the length of the password that can be enforced. No one can have the password less than 8 characters, right? So that will be a standard that will be followed in the organization. And also, like, no one can have easy password. For example, all characters in numerics or all characters in alphabets. It should be a combination. It should be a combination of uppercase, lowercase, then numerics, as well as special symbols. So many password policies will enforce the employees to choose the complex password and also to change the passwords at regular intervals. And also, employees should have their. Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Sequence, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 6.
Exactly.
Those,
Exactly. So that
even
you cannot reuse the same password.
it's not
Yeah.
the sequence of numbers, also repeater numbers also, sir.
Okay. Very good.
Depending.
Yeah, very good, very good. Because sometimes people will be using simply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or something, or followed by other characters. It is very, very vulnerable. So it should not be any predictable sequence, right?
Predictable sequence. Even no sequence. It's not followed by any number, right? 7, 8
Okay.
didn't come, or 1, 2. Not even 3 digit. 2 digit also. So nowadays they are restricting actually. So
Very good, very good, very good information, sir. Very good information.
combination of numbers also. Yeah.
Very good, Mr. Ravi. Because in those days, like when we are given the user ID and passwords, I remember many people are having both user ID and password are the same. I'm talking about 20, 30 years before, not now, because no system will allow now. And those days, the account will be admin and password will be admin. A system will accept it, but now there is a strict policies, and nowhere your username can be a part of your password.
Yeah, and the name also, right? Name
Yes,
also,
name
right?
also.
If
Yeah, name
right,
also.
we are
Name
giving
also
birth,
cannot be a part of your passwords. And as you mentioned, the sequence 6, 7, or 1, 2, or 4, 5, it cannot be the continuation of the passwords. And it will make sure you choose the combination of the parameters like
special
uppercase,
character.
lowercase, special characters. It will force. And also, you should have minimum of 8 characters or 12 characters. Depends upon your organization policy, and also like the history of password. You cannot have the,
Repetitive of last
yeah,
three.
repetitive passwords. Last three in my organization, last 24 passwords.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they are
So
last. Yeah.
I have to think a new password, because I cannot reuse a password of 24 occurrences. So if you want to reuse my password, I have to wait for 25 times. 25th time only I can have it. So by the time I'll definitely forget the password what I'm. So I need to generate new passwords at every time. Every 42 days,
Mhm.
every 42 days I need to think about a new password. I need to change it.
Some names, right? If you are registering for Oracle or if use for any Palo
Yes.
Alto F5, those
Yes.
things, right? In your password, those names should not come actually. So
Yes.
you
Exactly.
cannot
The
use
user account name. Yeah.
Oracle or Palo Alto 1, 2, 3 or
Yes.
and like that, they are also restricting company's name also, or any word, right, in table,
Dictionary word.
or
Yeah, dictionary word.
something, right, dictionary words also, it's restricted.
Yeah, it's forbidden. Yeah, it's forbidden. You should not use it. Because usually what the users will do, they'll simply carry system $123 or table $123 or something like that, which is
Yeah.
very vulnerable. And now the vendors are very strict. They cannot use the dictionary word. They should not use the vendor name, because I remember Cisco router password is Cisco and Cisco, and we were
Yes.
living with more than decades. And now later, because of the various security policies, so we are forced to choose a different password, because that is going to provide the access to the device, so anyone can misuse those credentials.
Hello, welcome 1 2 3, or hello one
Yes.
two three. Those are very
Yes.
predictable things.
Yes. And I still remember the olden days where even Windows they accepted a blank password also. Enter. Some accounts we run without password also. Null password or empty password was accepted in Windows. I can say in Windows 95 and Windows
Yeah, during
98 also.
Yeah, NT4
Yes.
was right as a server operating system. 95 or
Yes,
yeah,
at the time even blank
agree.
password was also accepted at one point of time. Then they made a change in the system and blank password was not accepted. Then we are using the dictionary word. Then I can say like we are getting matured in the process. A system itself will enforce. It will tell you whether the chosen password is a strong or easy password, or it is a uh, it will run the hash value, and it will tell you like, so whether this is
Weak or
strong
thin,
weak password or a
yeah,
strong
you
password.
can see the bar line, right? It's a
Yes,
complexity will show high. It's
exactly. it will
green or
guide it will
red.
guide the user. Yeah, it will guide the user whether you have chosen a weak password or a moderate password or a strong password,
Mhm.
so that you can rethink and you can add a few more complex characters. Only thing you have to memorize it. Only thing you have to memorize it, and you need to produce it, because passwords are very critical. Brute force tools are available which will instantly will crack many passwords, which has the potential to crack many user accounts. That is very vulnerable. And another one is employees should have rights, user rights, that are in line with the job functions. So this is tied up with their access control policy, because in access control policy there are many policies, like it may be in mandatory access control, discretionary access control, role based access control. And most of the corporates they are using role based access control, in the sense like what role the individual is going to play in the organization. Based on that, the access privileges should be granted to them, and this will be closely tied up with the job responsibilities.
So this is like RBAC,
Exactly.
APAC, and MAC DAC shorthand.
Exactly. The MAC is a mandatory access control,
DAC,
and DAC is a discretionary access control.
Discretionary.
Yeah,
RBAC, and
discretionary access
yeah.
control. And mostly we'll be using a role-based access control, which is very easy to know the role and responsibilities of a particular user, and based on that, the access will be
Method of
granted to them.
least privilege they'll be giving, right, for the
Exactly.
RBAC.
Exactly. The least privileged person will need to know, need to view kind of an access, not an elevated access. And at any point of time, you can able to change them to a particular group, so that they'll be inheriting those privileges. So no need to configure them on a individual account basis. You can always create a group or create a role, and you can always add a person to that group or a role, so that they'll be inheriting those privileges. In those days, like we'll be configuring access to each and every employee, so that will be one of the tedious process. But nowadays, like it is being better managed now, having more kind of granular access control. You can grant and you can revoke.
Fine grained.
Yes, fine grained access you can give. Even some access we can give, even session based access. time-bound access, event-based access. Those access were not there in the previous decade, I can say. Now you can clearly define the access the user can return only for a particular event or a particular session or a particular, you can give a time frame. After that, it will be elapsed. So now you can able to you can fine grained controls. You can have it over the access control to the employee based on the requirements, business requirements. And also the aware about the proper log on and log off procedures. Sometimes the system will be having the open session, and there are many enforcements can happen if the session is idle for 20 minutes or so. It can even log off the user. And some systems like it will be the user will be having the access on the system till the user is killing the session. So it is very vulnerable. So we need to know about the proper log on and log off procedures, and as well as like about the storing of the cryptographic keys, the biometric data, where the data is being stored, whether it is being stored on the local device or it is stored in a centralized device, how the users are getting authenticated, how the users will be identified and authenticated. Then the next is about the termination procedures. So proper termination procedures will help the organization to remove the old employees, like who should no longer have access to the network, because this can be done by even changing the passwords and codes, because sometimes some of the group accounts can be used for a common purpose. And if there is anyone is getting removed from the team, it is one of the best practice to change the passwords for the group accounts, so that even the ex-employee cannot access the account in case if they are maliciously they are doing so. And also like all the ID cards and badges that are in circulation should be documented and accounted for, because sometimes that may be used to get into the premises, maybe at the later stage, a physical access, they can get into any kind of restricted premises. Special user accounts that need to be monitored and should have proper controls in place, because the special user accounts will be having the overprivileged access when you compare to the normal users. Then remote access, where the intruders can enter into the system. We need to have specific logical security controls to monitor the remote access, and also like any files that has been accessed from a remote, that needs to be monitored, and we need to know the business purpose. Remote access should be logged.
Nowadays it has been automated. Earlier days we used to do manual. So for nowadays it's a scripting automation. So where I can submit one place, so it will
Very
reset
good.
all the right user associated with particular ID, like
Very good. Very good.
recently or any SAP based things. Wherever they have the specific access, those things will be removed, and dynamically it is updating the password, right? So we need to pick from that vault also. So if anybody
Very good.
number of counts has been changed or modified, right, increased based on that one, everything it's automated, right? So now we are moving to the automation. So though these things are become more right,
Yeah,
enhanced
more vulnerable.
nowadays
Yeah,
through automations.
yeah. Very good, Mr. Ravi. Because in those days, like we need to identify and we need to do it in a manual way, and they'll be chasing the technical team to know their access, their level, and they'll be asking them to remove it manually from those resources.
Multiple account they may be using. If you are using 10, 20 accounts logins,
Yes,
so every time
yes,
every tool we need to go and delete or
yes,
remove this one. So
yeah,
some of the time it's prone, right, groups or teams will leave one or two
yes,
passwords, so that
yes,
things
yes,
audit, most of the times it will come into audit. So that's what
yes,
nowadays
exactly,
uh,
exactly, exactly.
yeah, yeah, Ramesh.
So the automation will help you to identify as well as to be compliant with the audit requirements. It will make sure to remove it or disable those accounts.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ravi. And now we are going to discuss about the various tools that is used, especially in the network security. So network security, the first and foremost will be the firewalls. So being the perimeter security device, which will be facing the external traffic, and based on the firewall rules, it will allow or deny a particular traffic to enter into the corporate network. Then proxy servers, which will make sure to hide the identity of the internal resources to the external source, and it will provide the service. Then various technological solution, maybe your encryption. Then logical security, providing the access based on some security challenges, could be your passwords or security tokens. Then the various access control policies, the procedures, the antivirus software, the auditing systems, and also the log. So these are various tools that are used to achieve the network security. And firewalls, a basic part of any of network security requirements. So where this will be placed between the private local network and the internet. We do have the internal firewall, we do have the external firewall, we have the network level firewall, we have the host level firewall. So basically that will help you to monitor the traffic at all times, and it will either authenticate, it will monitor, log, and report. And certain types of firewalls, like network layer firewalls, it will screen the subnet firewalls, the packet filter firewalls. So some of the other types of firewalls are given here for, yeah, content filtering firewall is there, and we have the stateful inspection firewall is there, and we have the next gen firewall is there. So based on the requirements, like we can able to configure and able to get the security, that is the intended security in the environment. Then the encryption. Here, author is referring the process of encryption, converting the plain text into the unreadable characters ciphertext, and it is a reversible process. At the receiving end, then we'll be decrypting so that the ciphertext will be converted into the clear text, and that will be used. And once the encrypted information arrives at the intended recipient, the decryption process will deployed, and it will be restore the ciphertext into the plain text. Proxy servers, it will be hide the true address of the client workstation, the internal identity, and also it can even act as a firewall also. And even proxy servers can able to implement certain security rules and policies, like some of the non-business related requirements that will be discarded. Only certain business requirement queries that will be processed by the proxy servers, kind of acting as a middleman for the user requests. Antivirus programs, basically to um, protect the endpoint from malicious content. This will be having the live updates. You can say to have the latest information about the known virus, as well as nowadays the virus, the anti-malware programs are good enough to protect from both known threats and unknown threats. Known threats we can able to identify using the signatures. Unknown threats by behavior monitoring, as well as by predictive machine learning. It can able to suspect a certain traffic, and it will help to take actions on those like the threats also. The logical security, this is about the user ID and the password access, the various procedures around the authentication, the access rights, the authority levels. So this will help them to manage the process. Then auditing systems, this is um, to review and to know about the various happenings or events in that network or the host. For example, to track and record all the whatever is happening on the organization network. So that will help them to scrutinize if there is any suspicious activities, because when they go for the network logs, they will try to filter. They will try to filter, like if there is any data that has been exported, data exfiltration is happened, and so that, or they'll be having a trigger about any suspicious IP address or suspicious domain which is connected to that particular host or a network, and they'll be performing those actions. Then log management, again, this is one of the centralized solutions which will help you to perform the audit trials. because log management, like, is one of the excellent record for tracking and identifying the any kind of unauthorized users who may try to get access to the network, or if they are trying to get some access to the network resources. So that will help them to record the activities in a chronological order. So with the proper date and timestamp, as well as event ID will be there for each and every actions. You'll be having the event ID, and based on that, the auditing team, they can able to identify. So what is the action that is performed in that particular host?
Timestamps.
Yes, date and timestamp, which is very critical. Which is very critical. One more thing, when we say that timestamp, we need to know about the NTP also, the network time protocol that is configured for that device, because all the local logs will be based on the local time settings. For example, the the regional time settings in that particular device. Because some organizations, they will be pointing to their centralized network time protocol. For example, in my organization, the laptop what I'm using, it will be pointing out to Central European time, because the UK client. So all the devices in our network, that will be pointing to the Central European time. So if we take a timestamp, then we need to understand what is the regional time that has been set for that particular device, so that you can able to perform, you can able to reconstruct the scene of incidents. So what has happened in a network level. So that is very important. And there is another information here, according to one of the survey that is conducted in 2006, 3243 Nmap uses. And Nmap is one of the old tool, I can say, network mapper tool. So now it has been upgraded to ZenMap. So basically, that is used to perform the port scanning of your targeted host or a network, to understand the open ports, as well as the running services. You'll be able to identify the operating system running on your targeted host, and also to identify some of the vulnerabilities. So that will help them to perform a kind of port scanning. Then Nexus, again, vulnerability scanning tool. Then Wireshark, basically a packet capture analyzer tool. And Snot is a software-based IDS. Some of the top-rated network security tools, which can help you to protect your basic network security requirements. Nexus, Wireshark, Snot, or we have the open versions, and some of the other network security tools, which will be like the professional version, which is not a open version. And LANguard, OmniGuard, some of the tools that can be used even for your network security audit requirements, the intrusion detection requirements, as well as for the basic network management solutions. So next is about the behavioral audit, because vulnerabilities are not often technical weakness. Sometimes it will be kind of individual behavior within an organization. Sometimes a simple example, this is a users leaving their computers unlocked or being vulnerable to phishing attacks. So sometimes even the behavioral audit is also within the scope of the security audit. So auditors, when they are visiting the premises, they will observe whether the users are locking their system even when they are going for a short break. Even if the system is unattended, one of the best practice, you have to enable the password lock kind of system. You have to lock it, then you have to go for a short break. And this is one of the best practice, because the system, if it is not locked, then it is prone to some attacks also. It is being vulnerable, and this is a level 1 breach. In my organization, if someone is leaving the station without locking with a password, it's a L1 breach. The person will be getting a notified from the ISMS team. It's a L1 breach, and there will be a warning given to them. And also, like, if they are even going for a meeting to a room, also they have to lock their laptop with a Kensington lock slot. or with a table, so that even the laptops cannot be removed from the table. It is one of the mandatory process in my organization, where physical security of the device also to be followed, and all the employees are given the Kensington slot. There will be a numeric lock attached to that. So we need to, whenever we are going for a break, even in the meeting room also, we should not leave the laptop without an attendant. It has to be locked. Logically, it has to be protected with the password, as well as physically, we need to use that Kensington slot. And also, like, we need to have the proper awareness, and they'll be going through the penetration testing. And wherever possible, we need to provide an kind of an awareness to all the employees. Then auditing the application security. So in three main functions about the programming, and second one is the main functions on the processing, and third one is about the access. And first one is about the programming to follow with the standard process, and this is for the developing team. And second was about the processing, setting up the firewalls, a password. Those controls will be coming into place. And next topic is about the SODs, segregation of duties. Because in small enterprises, you'll be finding the activities will be performed by the same user, but there will be no segregation of duties. Like it is one of the vulnerable area. You can say, like in most of the corporates, they'll be following the segregation of duties. Based on that, the access will be granted to the user, and this has to be monitored, and you'll be having a clear accountability for each and every action that is performed by the user, and SOD will help you to achieve that. Based on that, the restrictions will be allowed or configured for the particular user. Segregation of duties. So there will be limitations. Then review and report. This is like the auditing team will be having the opportunity to review, and also they will be providing the report of the IT landscape, because the ultimate goal is to, like, whether the organization can able to achieve their goals or not with the available IT infrastructure, whether it needs to be enhanced based on the requirements. So that is the purpose over here. And then they'll be reviewing along with the financial statement also. They need to understand about the financial status of the organization and what is their budget that has been proposed for the upcoming years, whether the organization can able to adapt a kind of technological requirements, and based on that the recommendations will be provided by the auditors. They'll be reviewing the various systems and the various applications that is being used, and if there are any end of life systems or applications, then that will be recommended to get upgrade to the next version or the next available supported versions. And they'll be reviewing the information processing facilities, systems development, and overall the enterprise architecture and various technological requirements. And they'll be even performing the GCC also, the general control review, or the specific application control review audits. So that will help to understand the various process that has been followed within the organization. Then information assurance. This is like after assessing the existing process and procedures, the auditing team will provide a kind of an assurance, like having these process in place. They provide a kind of an assurance to the organization that the process that has been followed is standard, and it provides a reasonable amount of security. It's kind of information assurance, and some of the controls which needs to be added or edited, like your preventive control or detective control, that will be added into it. So this is about the information assurance. And most of the cases you'll be finding the internal auditing team. So there'll be time to time they'll be using their set of guidelines to evaluate, and they'll be providing the reasonable assurance to the organization. So do we have any doubts, any queries? And this is about the IT audit process. We do have the internal audit and external audit. Scope of an audit, we already discussed in the beginning of the session. Scope of the object, scope, objectives. And two things we need to see from the audit perspective. One is independence. Independence is like the auditor should be free from various conditions and threatening objectivity. Like there should be free, and there should not be any dependency. There should not be any dependency on their audit. And the objective is to make sure that they need to provide a honest belief in their exercise, and they need to provide a kind of the truth information from their process. So it's about the independence and about the objectivity. And also we will be having the internal audit as well as the external audit. External audit, once in a year you will be finding from the external part. This is an internal audit, and the employees of the same organization. So the internal audit will be supported by the internal people who will make sure to have the standard process in place and help the organization to achieve any kind of requirements when they go for any certification. And external audit by the external people. Let us go to the external audit. And this is the internal audit reports. What should be available in the reports. And third-party audit. This is an external audit. Basically, whenever an organization is going for a kind of external audit, the third-party audit will be there. They will be assessing the various process within the scope of their audit, and they will be performing the audit, identifying the gaps, and they provide their recommendations. A third-party audit. So with this, we are completing the unit 2. And do we have any doubts, any queries? Do we have any doubts, any queries?
One thing apart from this. So I saw the course material that your name is there, Ramesh. So how often you will upgrade the content, right? Reason being asked this question, right? So some of them are very legacy details, right?
Yes.
How often these topics or content revised? I know, right? It is 2016. We I think University of Madras started this course. So
if there is a revise in the syllabus, then we'll revise the content. And one more thing, once in a year or once in 2 years, we'll be changing some of the contents, not all the entire contents. It depends upon the syllabus. It depends upon all the material you'll be finding will be matching your syllabus. If there is a change in your syllabus, then definitely the content will change. And the text you find on the slide, it is taken from your courseware.
No, his only the is more of the latest updates has been updated on specific topics, sir. Right?
Yeah. So if you see, right, ISC square or right ISACA, they keep you see, right, multiple are PMP, some standard organizations, right? So keep working on it, right? 7th edition, 8th edition, 9th edition, the span of like 10 years. You can see not 1 or 2, right? It is very dynamic nowadays. But the topics we found here, right, though it is right, some standard, but the content looks like very legacy.
Maybe some of the contents, but again, some of the discussions we'll be taking from the recent. For example, in the previous session, we discussed the MFA, the multi-factor authentication, which was not there in the material, but we discussed because only after COVID only many people are using that MFA, multi-factor authentication, right? So wherever possible, we are adapting the latest practices. latest, even the biometrics also we discussed about the latest happenings in the industry. So wherever possible, we are adapting the latest topics. And as you mentioned, some of the topics we do have the legacy kind of a content which is there in the courseware, and we are reproducing the same. And if there is a change in the syllabus, definitely we will change those content, because the material what we are using should align with your syllabus.
Yes, yes. So that is the only thing, right? So because
Yes.
I saw that content. So it's a guest faculty kind. Your name was there. So just
Yes.
sort of.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Ravi. Sure. We'll update it. Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything else?
So we covered two units, right? So how about the other thing?
Yeah, remaining 3 units. Yeah, remaining 3 units we can cover in the next session. Remaining 3 units are very the content are very less when you compare to the first 2 units.
Mm-hmm.
So we have remaining 3 more units, and that we can comfortably finish in the next session, in the third session.
Okay. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. So thank you all. I would like to thank all for joining today's session. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, ma'am, for the opportunity. Thank you all.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.